Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see you here. We have sort of a small crowd, but with that cold weather, I can understand it out there. But anyway, I'm so happy to be in Kuwait. My friends who know me know that for me, Kuwait's like a second home, and I absolutely love it here. My love affair with Kuwait started in the mid-1980s, and I lived in Saudi Arabia for 12 years. And I used to come over to be in Kuwait, and the first time I came, my feet touched the soil there. I don't know, it just felt magical to me. And the Kuwaiti people were so nice. And then my relationship with Kuwait went to what they would call in the literary world, the best of times and the worst of times. Because the worst of times was in the fall of 1990, whenever the invasion occurred. And I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I saw it and my heart just dropped. And I knew I had to get over here in this area and start talking to Kuwaitis to find out what happened, because I'm an avid reader, a news junkie. I wanted to know what was happening to my friends, the Kuwaitis. So I flew across the world, going to London, to Cairo, and did everything I could to find out their stories. So that was the worst of time. People had fled their homeland. They didn't know if their home's still there. They'd lost some of their loved ones. But I interviewed all the people that I could get to find out what had happened to them. And I want to tell y'all that the end result of that trip was this book called The Rape of Kuwait. And it was the only book in America that told what happened to the people of Kuwait on that very horrific day. And as you know, in America, and you can tell from this year alone, we have a lot of varying opinions there. And there were a lot of Americans in 1990 that did not want America to have anything to do with helping our friends, the Kuwaitis. And I am so pleased and happy to report that a small book I wrote made a big difference in the hearts and minds of many people in America. And there were so many people saying, no, 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 and I couldn't believe it. I had friends calling me. George Bush came down on the airplane ramp, the President Bush, and people were questioning him about going to Kuwait and risking, and what was it worth, our soldiers' lives, blah, blah, blah. And I was ecstatic, as any writer, when he held up this book. And he said, if you want to know why we need to go to Kuwait, you read this book. And then he walked off. So the book was hugely successful in America. And while I'm talking about this book, I do want to say that there are people in the audience that really helped me, and there are several people in Kuwait that probably I would have had such a difficult time I could not have gotten this book written, because I wouldn't have been able to get to the people without help. And we have two of those people in the audience. We have the lovely Muna. You stand up, Muna. She was 18 years old when she traveled around in Kuwait interviewing and helping, because it was really good to have a woman with me to talk to other women. You're not going to get up and wave? Okay. Come on, Muna, don't be shy. You helped a lot. And then the man who really helped to make it happen, Saud Al-Matawa. Come on, Saud. He handled all the media. I think the Minister of Information had gotten wind of how organized you are. And they put him in charge, and I was so lucky, because then they told him, because I had written this book and they wanted me to know more about other things, and they wanted Saud to take care of me, and boy, you did. You were just fantastic. I don't think I've ever been more impressed with anyone. And there's another gentleman who's not here who helped me so much in Riyadh. And these people have remained my friends all these years, and I'm so happy to count them as my friends. And that gentleman who helped me in Riyadh, even though I'd lived in Riyadh 12 years, it's very difficult to get around in Riyadh if you're a woman, even if you've been there a long time. And he arranged the drivers and connecting with people. And that gentleman who helped so much is someone y'all probably have heard of, His Excellency Ahmed Al-Fahad. And he's really a kind, gentle, good man who really did a lot to help me get this book written. But anyway, I'll move on now after talking about the book and just tell you that tonight we're on women and writing. And I'm going to kind of touch on three things. I'm going contemporary because even though it's so interesting to learn about and hear about the few women writers there were from ancient times, because in the very beginning it was difficult for anyone to be readers and writers because people in power generally kept people from even knowing how to read and write because they were trying to keep the power. But as time passed, of course, men took out their pens and started writing, and it took a long time, but women did too. And I believe when we tell women's stories now, it just gives you such a different picture of life, because women whose voices were unheard for so long, they're more interested, I know I am as a woman, in other women and in the home and the children and what's happening, even though we have a lot of political female writers and all of that, and that's wonderful because everyone should choose what they prefer. But I really love getting the inside story of the human life at home with the family or even going out, and also at times there are issues that women have that men do not have that are difficulties that we need to talk about. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and how I came to be a writer. This poor little girl from southern Alabama in a town of 600 people. It's not that easy to jump out of that. And then I'm going to talk about two of the books I've written and the women and tell you about their lives and give you the richness of what their stories bring us. Stories we would never hear about if it were not for women speaking out. As far as me, it's in the genes, I guess. I love books about as much as a human being can love books, to the point I'm obsessive, to the point my house stays in a really bad condition. Friends come and they see books everywhere and they say, can I stay longer and help you clean? Because I'll try to clean, but then I'll spot a book I want to look at, and then I end up on the floor looking at the book. But I got this honest. My great-grandmother was a school teacher. Back in the days when there were still horse and buggies, they didn't have any automobiles. And her son, my grandfather, always lived with us. It was wonderful having my grandfather live in the house. And as I said earlier, I grew up in a little town called Louisville, Alabama, of only 600 people, very conservative. Maybe that's the reason I've enjoyed so much the Middle East, because I like the conservative lifestyle. But anyway, my grandfather told me about his mother. He said, oh, you're reminding me of my mother. He said, she never did anything in the house. She was the talk of the whole county because she never did, when she'd do cooking, it wasn't very good to eat. When she would clean the house, it'd just be hit and miss. She was always reading, and said, my poor mother, because they were poor people of modest means, he said she would go in the kitchen and pick out the cans, and she would read aloud all the words on the can. When I thought, oh no, I wish my grandmother were alive today. And he said when people would come to visit, she would hear from a distance the horse and buggy, and she would run out of the house and run down the lane, and people would think she was running from something because she looked rather scary to them come running out. But she would rush up to them and say, did you bring me anything to read? That was the only thing she was interested in. So I got my love of reading very honest. And I remember as a little girl, because we couldn't afford books, I would stand by the road every week and wait for the bookmobile. They had this wonderful thing in America in those days called the bookmobile. And I would stand there waiting, and usually you can only check out 2 a week, but I loved the books, so the poor guy took mercy on me, and he would let me have 4 a week. So I felt myself quite, the lucky person. And then when I went to school, in our little school library, I'd read all the books in the whole library by the time I was 15. Not that it was a big library, I don't want to exaggerate this. But my school teachers, my literature teacher, felt so badly and knew how much I loved reading. And so she would go to a local small college, and she would bring back books for me to read. And when I was 14 and a half, and as I said, we were a family of modest means. We didn't buy books like people do today. I saved my money, and I said, I'm going to buy my first book in my collection. I'm going to be a book collector. And my music teacher said she would take me to Columbus, Georgia, which is a large town about an hour and a half from Louisville. And I took my money, and I had like $6. And I was so proud of that. And I went in this store, and I looked, and there were all these books. And I thought, how will I make a decision? This is so momentous. And I went, and I found the biggest book on the shelf with the most pages, because I thought, I'll get the most pages and I can keep reading it. And I still have that book. And it's so funny to read it and see it and what a mess it is, but I keep it in an honored place because now I have a library and I have a lot of books, and I often long to be able to reach back in time and bring my grandmother and say, read all you want, grandmother. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful? That would be so wonderful. I've got tears in my eyes just thinking about it. And her son, my grandfather, read all the time. He was newspapers, books, whatever he could get his hands on. So it passed down. And his daughter, my Aunt Margaret, the sister to my father, just died last year at 101. And still very active. I supplied her with books, and she was still reading like 3 and 4 books a week. So I just hope I can do that. And she was very healthy and a reader and doing things for people. I think if you read, I should tell this to young kids, you'll be healthier. You'll live longer for sure if you'll just read. So that would be nice, something to encourage kids. But now what I'm going to do is I want to tell you about 2 very amazing women. And both of them lived in Iraq under the Saddam regime. Now you're saying, now how did you meet them? Okay, now that's a story into itself. I was sitting at home reading the New York Times, heard over the radio Saddam announced, or the television, no more Americans. There's nobody. He was really angry with that Richard Butler, who was there trying to find all the weapons of mass destruction. And he decided no more Americans. He was kicking us out and no more reporters. And I remember I called a friend. I said, I bet I could get in there. They said, forget it. You wrote The Rape of Kuwait. And I said, no, I bet I can. So I wrote a letter directly to Saddam, sent it to Baghdad through the UN mission, the Iraqi UN mission, and said, now I know you're probably not going to let me come because I wrote the book, The Rape of Kuwait. Here's a copy. And I sent a copy with it. You might as well go ahead and read it or have somebody read it. And I said, but I'd love to come because I'd like to see what's going on in Iraq. Because really, even as bad as things were with Iraq, I don't like sanctions. It usually just hurts poor people and children, and it's not really a good way to go, in my opinion. So anyway, I couldn't believe it. I was at my mother's house, and I got home to my answer machine, and there was a phone message, and it said, Mrs. Jean Sasson, you're welcome to come to Iraq. Please go to New York. It was sort of a sing-sing, and I'm in. I was so excited, and all my friends said, you're going to get killed. It'll be a car accident. It'll be so. I said, no, I'm not important enough. They're not going to waste any time on me with something like that. So I went to Iraq in July of 1998, sort of prepared to be a little upset because I had seen all the atrocities. It didn't take me long to realize the vast majority of the Iraqi people were in a bad stew on their own, and they were innocent like most people are when their government does things. But I went into the Al-Rashid, and I was very happy to be there. I got a car in Jordan and crossed the desert, and everybody said, no, you didn't cross the desert. There are bandits out there killing everybody. I said, well, this driver was going so fast, no bandit could have caught us. So anyway, everybody in the Al-Rashid said, are you German? Because they knew no Americans were coming. And I said, no. Guess again. They didn't believe me when I said I'm an American. They said, what are you doing here? I mean, we thought Americans weren't coming. I said, I got lucky. And they said, well, what do you write for a magazine? I said, no, I write books. They said, what have you written? And I had taken 50 copies of The Rape of Kuwait with me. And I dished that thing out, and I said, I wrote this book, where were you, honey? And they said, oh, God, it was awful. We were in these trenches. It was Americans were bombing us. It was really sad. And but anyway, the way I met Merآة, the lady that I feature in this book who had a most interesting life, no one ever came to follow me. I had read that you were followed everywhere. And I got my feelings hurt because it was like, they followed Dan Rather, they followed Diane Sawyer, they're not following Gene Sasson. I'm not important enough to be followed. So I got the manager at the Al Rashid to get me a driver, take me down to the information office. And I remember the guy named Shaker, and I walked in the door, and I said, I'm Gene Sasson, and I'm here, and nobody's following me. And he said, we knew you were here. I said, well, I don't know, but still, I'm feeling a little bit insignificant. And I said, I'd like to have someone to go around with me so I can interview the ladies here, because I'm a person who deals with the ladies. He said, no, we'll get you a nice man. I said, no. He said, we'll get you a nice man. These men need work. I said, I just won't go then. Forget it. And he called Mayada that night. She told me later as we were together. He said, she had not worked, though, in like 4 years, she said, and she was a single mother. She said they give all the jobs to the men for their families. And she said Shaker called her, and she knew him, and she used to work for them because she's great English, great translator. He said, I have a very difficult American woman here. She will only use a female. Can you come? And Mayada walked in the door the next day, and there's just something about her sweet smile. And she stood back at the door because she didn't know what to make of me either. She said she couldn't believe there was somebody down there fighting with Shaker about anything. She said the Americans come and they're so happy to get here they don't say a word of complaint. I said, well, I have found, I've lived in the Middle East a long time, people respect me more if I state my mind. And I said, hopefully I won't get thrown in the dungeon for that. So, but anyway, she walked in the door, we hit it off. She was with me 3 weeks. I was able to go anywhere, well, certainly not to military installations, but talking to people, going anywhere. I was treated so nice by everybody. I couldn't believe it. They didn't hold the rape of Kuwait against me, so they were very nice about it. But anyway, I left. Mayada and I remained friends. A year later, she disappears. I can't find her. I'm panicking. Her mother, Selwa, lived in Amman, Jordan. I'm calling her. She's looking for her. Mayada had been arrested. It's like she had a print shop, and someone passed out leaflets in her neighborhood against Saddam, and they just arrested everybody. And poor Mayada, the single, ends up in prison. But what it was, it gave us an inside look at a prison that very few people would ever know about. And Mayada al-Askari is from a very famous family. Some of you might have heard her mother's father, Sati al-Nushri, who was considered one of the first Arab nationalists, and her paternal grandfather, Jafar al-Askari, who was the famous soldier who won the highest award, the only person ever. He won the highest award that the Germans give and the highest award that the Turks gave for an unbelievable soldier, because he was on the Turkish side, and then after after they killed a lot of his friends to put them to death, he joined then the German side. Not the German side. He joined the British side. So he had the British medal and the German medal. I had that wrong, sorry. But anyway, famous family. Everywhere I went in Baghdad, they said, oh, her family, what a family. They helped to get the first Faisal from Saudi Arabia on the throne in Iraq. And then her grandfather Jafar was one of the first people assassinated in, I believe it was 32. And then Nouri al-Sayed, who was the prime minister there for 30 years, and he was murdered in 1958 when they overthrew the royal family there, and he was her uncle. So she was right that it was an intellectual house. She knew everything. I said, you're a wealth of information. We need to get this down because so few people know all the things you know about the workings. And she'd been given awards by Saddam for her writing there because she was a newspaper writer. But once she was in jail, then I knew we had to do it. But she got out 3 weeks later, and it was the most horrific experience. And when dealing with my female heroines, people in the West will say, oh, I don't believe that. That didn't happen. They're so negative. they said they made this up. I said, you don't know the Arab mind at all. The problem I have with the Arab people that I interview is they want to play down things that might embarrass someone or their family. They're very, very gentle about things like that. I said, I have to pull out the bad stuff. And these are not people that are making up stuff. They're trying to keep me from. Mayada used to hang up on me when I'd get too close to something she wouldn't talk. And then she'd later say, oh, the phone line went dead. I said, stop it. You just hung up on me. But anyway, I believe every word. I mean, there were people even today write and say the people that we interviewed and everything for the rape of Kuwait, they said that was all a lie. That wasn't true. I said, my God, I can't believe it. Of course it was true. Every word was true that they told me. I believe every word. These were very honest people who lived through horrific times. But anyway, I'm glad I'm a positive thinker and not a negative thinker because that's awful. But anyway, Mayada was snatched from her print shop, taken to a jail cell. She was screamed, didn't want to go in. It was number 52. Her father had died at age 52 in room 52 at a hospital. And so she said she knew she was going to die when she saw that 52. She was so upset. She's an emotional type person. Anybody be emotional being thrown in prison in Iraq, though. But anyway, she survived torture, other things that happened to the other women. It was a tragic tale. But these women, what is the beauty of this story is how those 18 women came together and so helped each other and comforted each other and were the strength for one another. You have such a new respect for the strength, the bravery of these women who had nothing and no one to turn to and were being tortured daily without mercy, things that we wouldn't even put in the book. It was so horrific. I was afraid people might not be able to even stay with the book because it was that bad in Saddam's prisons, as a lot of you know who have heard stories about what happened even in Kuwait when people, so we met with parents whose children had been tortured and hung in the garden and left there. There was just no end to the kind of cruelty. And it's not just Iraq. We heard horrible stories when America went to Iraq of things when our soldiers, and that's what I told Mayada. She was so happy about Saddam going to be overthrown. I said, we watch out. Anytime you have war, you don't know where it's going because you've got too many human beings, too many individuals that can change things on their own. But at the end of the day, we all have to hold people accountable who can intentionally inflict that kind of harm on people. But she escaped. She escaped to Jordan. She got her children. She went on to live a good life. She worked at the newspaper in Gulf News in Dubai, which was wonderful. The book changed her life because people knew her and knew of her bravery, her strength, her inspiration. And I'm so happy that I was able to be in a place, in a position, to tell a story that the world would know nothing about if I had not met Mayada. No one would know about what happened to women in the prison cells. No one would know about the bravery of those women. No one would know this. What I love about it is all these little secrets about the royal family or her family and the things that happened. She was a wealth of knowledge. I always hate it when we lose someone like that. Unfortunately, she passed away last year. We talked on the phone every single day. I think I was Mayada's best and only friend. And because she was so involved with her children, she didn't have time for a lot of that sort of friendship. But she was a unique, wonderful woman. And one thing about her, which you'd appreciate, she was very devout, and she wore the hijab. And the women in Baghdad, because they were trying really hard, I don't know why, because it has to be a personal choice, everywhere we'd go, they would be very fashionable, and they'd say, take that off. And she would get upset, I would get upset, and we got in the car, and she said, are you ashamed to be with me? I said, get out of here. Of course not. That is a personal choice that every woman can make on her own. And if you want that, It's wonderful. I wore it every single day I was in Saudi Arabia. And it always made me feel really good. I felt very safe and good, and I liked it. And I was with everybody else who was doing it. But I told Mayada, I said, as long as no one is forcing you to do something against your will, I'm happy, you know, because that's the way it should be. I said, pay no attention to any of these high fashion women. So anyway, she was really cute and had a great personality. Her story is worth knowing. And I hope that some of you, they've ordered a bunch of books in the bookstores in town, but we couldn't get them here. But this, for all of you, I know you must have keen interest in Iraq and Iraqi people, because it's your close neighbor, and it's also affected your lives in many ways. And then the second book I want to tell a little bit about is still in Iraq, but it's a Kurdish woman with a totally, this is her on the book, Joanna. And she was a woman who survived the chemical attacks that Chemical Ali rained down on their heads in Kurdistan. And she had, like most people, I remember when I was in Baghdad looking around and meeting all these people, I was thinking, what lives they've led. It's just, in many ways, so awful, with so much violence and turnover of governments and things like that are always so difficult on the population. All of these people I saw, but yet they still remain so nice and friendly to me, someone they could have considered an enemy, even though I wasn't. I love human beings, and I only judge people by one thing. Are you kind or are you mean? Because if a person is kind, they're just going to do great things for everything in the world and care about other people. But there are vicious people. Those people I run away from. But Miss Joanna, a beautiful little Kurdish girl growing up in Baghdad, where the Kurds were not particularly welcome, but they went every summer to Kurdistan, and I loved finding out, because I didn't know a lot about Kurdistan or Kurds and the family life and everything, and I was able to find out all of this from Joanna. Is this driving y'all crazy? Is that my earring? Let me take that thing off. I'm sorry. Is that better? Okay. Okay. It's driving me crazy. But anyway, this woman fell in love and married a Kurdish freedom fighter, lived in the little fighting village, was with him. Then they were fleeing and got gassed. She was temporarily blinded, but recovered. And they had to climb the mountain on a mule to get to Iran to safety. So it's a real thriller type of book that you just can't believe anyone could survive that. And she was another one that, I mean, I'm a really sensitive person. I love people. I love animals. Yeah, I see you grinning down there. I always am gathering up cats and getting people who don't want a cat, get cats when I'm here. But I remember talking to Joanna, and we were talking about the trip over the mountains. And I was very interested in the welfare of the mule. And I remember saying to Joanna, stop a minute, I want to ask you something. When you were crossing and you were on the ledge, she said they were on the ledge, they were about to fall, what was the expression on that mule's face? Well, she hung up on me on the spot. And loved telling other people, said, this is a crazy woman. She's worried about the expression on the mule's face when my life's in danger. But I often wondered what happened to the poor thing. But that is another story that I think is so important, because it tells us all something we don't know. And that's what I love about reading. I open up a book and I travel across the world and I learn about this person's life. And because every life is so interesting. Every one of us has an interesting life. It's only if people know about it or don't know about it. But you're able to travel, and I did that at age 14 and 15. I remember sitting in the swing, and for some reason I was always so involved and interested in books about the Middle East. Maybe because you guys, it's just so exotic over here. I mean, everything about it. Your women are beautiful. The clothes are different. They look so nice, and it's just everybody's interested because it's very unusual. But yet, you're such nice folks. I can vouch for that. But anyway, these books, these two books about these two women, y'all probably already know a lot of this stuff, but you might learn something. And to date, as a woman writer, I've written 13 books, some better than others, and some you'd be more interested in than others. But I had one book that I'll tell you about that I think you guys would be interested in because it's so unusual. And it's the true story of Osama bin Laden's first wife, Najwa, and his fourth-born son, Omar. I was sitting at my house, and I got a phone call, and I looked, and I knew like the different codes, and I said, this is from Egypt. I wonder who's in Egypt. And I picked it up, and it was Omar bin Laden. And he had known a princess in Saudi Arabia that I had written about, and she had said, you can trust her, you can trust her. And so he called and said, I want the truth of my life and my mother's life and my brothers and sisters' lives to be told. He was really a gentle person. And I said, I write about women, and also I'm still a little bit mad about 9/11. I don't know if I could do you justice or not, because I don't want to ever go into anything and be one way or the other. You really have to be open-minded about everything. And then I received a letter from his mother, Najwa, which was such a shock. It was in Arabic. I had to get it translated and everything. And she said, my son is the best man. We all depend on him. He's kind. He's gentle. You would like him. Please consider writing his story. And so that sort of got my attention. And so I got in touch with Omar, and I said, well, Omar, the publishers probably won't publish it. I write about women. That's just my specialty. They put you in a little slot, and they try to keep you there in the publishing world. I said, if your mother would join in, and I didn't think she would. A few days later, he said, she will join in, but you cannot ask her questions about my father's activities because she knows nothing, because she lived a very isolated life in Purda. She married him when she was very young. And she was being honest, I'm sure. I'm sure he didn't go home and confide in her anything that he was doing. And so that book was born called Growing Up Bin Laden. And of all the books I've written, I think it's the most appealing because you find out things you couldn't have imagined in your widest imagination, how life really was. And I came away more angry with him than I ever had because he was so brutal to his children. And you would not have thought that from him. You thought at least he would have been a good father. And maybe he was when he was younger. But anyway, as a woman, as a writer, I'm so happy that I have been able to accumulate a treasure trove of memories and life stories from really very inspiring women and tell these stories to the world, because our whole life is more interesting when we hear from the men and we hear from the women and we hear all the stories, and then you can put together the puzzle of what life is really like when you're hearing from everybody. And that has been my goal, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be in Kuwait tonight, to be talking to everyone, and to be sharing with you something that's very important to me, which is the story of women who have something to say and an important story. Now, I didn't talk as long as I usually do, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time for if anyone wants to ask a question, and I hope somebody does. You've been thinking questions? No. I always defend them. Thank you. Thank you so much. But it was really a big pleasure to be here, to talk to all of you, and I hope that it will make you be interested in these wonderful women that I have been able to interview and to write their stories. Do you have a question? Oh, you just scratching your ear, or you got a question?
اوكي دكتور احمد سعيد استاذ الاثار والتاريخ القديم في كليه الاثار جامعه القاهره، واستاذ التاريخ والاثار كليه الاداب قسم تاريخ. الحقيقه المحاضره يعني فعلا شيقه وسعدنا بيها جدا. انما السؤال اللي ممكن يسال ل يعني استاذه واديبه تكتب عن النساء، هل النساء اللائي تختاريهن لمجرد ان حياتهم فيها نوع من الاكشن، نوع من الالم او غير الالم، ولا تجدي فيهم شيء من جينا ساسون شخصيا؟ هل تجدي فيها شيء من نفسك ولا مش بالضروره ان يبقى في؟ انا اعرف طبعا الاختلاف الجنسيه وكده، لكن الانسانيه واحده في كل العالم. هل الإنسانية في السيدة هي التي تختاريها، أم الأحداث حتى ولو كانت هذه السيدة شريرة مثلا على سبيل المثال يعني؟ Thank you.
Okay, I got it. Now then I'll swap with you. Here we go. This works. I love the question. Most of all, I love what you do. If I had a choice and I wasn't going to be a writer, I'd do what you do. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful job. I really do. No, what happens with, it's like almost by accident. It lands in my lap and it'll be an interesting story, but I do have to like the person. I feel I have to have a connection. Because if I don't, I get about 10 requests a month from stories that are important, all of them. But there has to be that connection that I feel I can get into their life, feel I'm a part of them. Because every woman I've written about said when they would tell me a story and then I would write it. And they would read it and say things like, it's like you were there. You captured it. Because I really felt it. And I am a very humane person. I'm very emotional. I love people. And sometimes when I'm writing, I'm crying. Particularly with Merآt's story. There was a young woman named Sarah in prison with her who was only like 20, horribly tortured. And she came back from being tortured and said, Mama, Papa, look what they've done to your daughter. Mama, Papa, save me. And if you don't cry when you think of that terror of a young woman. So yes, and I read once where the guy who wrote the dinosaur movie, Michael Crichton, that his secretary walked in and he was jumping around on the floor pretending to be a dinosaur. So I guess writers have to really get into it. And I know I have to be emotional. And also I have to say I'm more drawn to the Middle East than any other area for whatever the reason. And like I said, it's such an interesting area. It's very exotic. And the lives of women here are very rich. But yet they're just a totally different perspective than you would find, because we've got plenty of stories in America that could be told, but I don't feel that same pull, you know. So thank you so much for that question. It's something I've never had before, and I like it. Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir. I'll be right with you. Go ahead, sir. Do you need this too?
Yes.
Oh, God. Here I go. Oh, you got something that'll translate? Oh, okay.
بما ان حضرتك تمنيت انك تكون استاذ التاريخ، لو ما كنتش اديبه.
Sorry. I'm home.
حضرتك تمنيتي انك تكوني.
Somebody's got to translate. I can't get it.
انا مصطفى جمعه، صحفي في جريده الجريده.
Just tell me. Just 1 minute. Sorry. Something happened here. I'm all hung up. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
انا مصطفى جمعه، صحفي. حضرتك تمنيتي انك تكوني استاذ التاريخ لو ما كنتش اديبه. يعني معنى هذا ان ممكن في قصص كتيره في الشرق الاوسط ساحره عن النساء، ولا انت حضرتك تستهويك المآسي للنساء فقط؟ Thank you.
Maybe. Yes. Yes, I do. Can y'all hear me now? This is getting funny. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is all my hair, so it might come off if it gets, snatch it out. Yes, I do. Is that it? I do write about the atrocities, because so many times when the women come to me, they've had a story that's very tragic and they want to share it with the world. I don't guess so much as a warning as just the fact that they um, believe that it's important to let people know what happened to them, like when they were in a prison in Iraq or something like that. And I agree with them. We do need to know it. People say, why are you torturing yourself? Because you get so involved and you suffer. And I said, well, if they go through it, then I need to be able to know it. So, and I really believe that. Yes, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your impressive...
You going to speak in English?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
Because I'm from Turkey and I'm graduate from American Culture and Literature.
Okay.
And I'm studying Arabic here and I'm Kurdish. My origin is Kurdish.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you'll be
really
interested in Joanna's story, yes.
Exactly. I haven't been heard before, so I'm really impressed by it.
Yes.
And maybe after I want to ask some questions to you. But first, thank you for this. And it's really impressive because I study for a women and human organization in my country.
Okay.
And I'm familiar with the pain of women. And even in my country now, some of my friends in prison now, unfortunately, because of political reasons.
Yeah.
And some of them are tortured, unfortunately. So I really wonder, are you planning to write down the story of the Kurdish woman in Turkey also? Because there is really very impressive conflict now in my country, especially in Kurdish part.
Yeah.
Maybe you are following.
I'm very familiar with it.
Yes. You know, and even a woman lost her life, and her dead body stay on the street for a week. The government didn't let the
Did she
family
have
to
children?
Yeah, 7 children.
Oh, no.
And her children just watched her dead body. So there are a lot of story really, and also I'm planning to write down this story. So I want to learn about Arab women also, Arab literature. So I'm studying Arabic here, and I believe that if women in the Middle East can come together to find out a new way as a solution to the problems, there will be a new era for all the for all the region.
Yes.
So I feel sorry because there is no so woman here. I feel so sorry for that. We are not interested in social issues. These are our mistakes. I'm really hopeful despite everything. But first of all, we have to share our pains. We have to tell our pains. As Mr. said, with the eyes of humanity, with the human values, not with the base of religion, or sexes, or other differences.
Well, I don't think you'd find anybody that would disagree with you that no one needs to be tortured, no one, certainly not for their political feelings, and that we all come together. But this was my thing, and y'all excuse my back. I believe that women, yes, should band together, but I want the men by our side too.
Exactly.
I think that's important, that our men are a big part of our lives. They're, in some cases, the most important part of our lives, and they have some of the strengths that we might not have. We have some they might not have, and that's why we're so good together. And I'm convinced that we need our men by our side. I know when I was in Saudi Arabia and I was married to Peter Sasson, and there were a few things happening to some friends, and I said, come on. A lot of them got tired of me because my boss, who was Saudi, said, oh, stop it. There's nothing you can do. And I talked to my husband. He said, oh, stop it. That's not my business. I said, but it is your business. Because people have asked me, what business is it of yours to tell the story of other people when something is wrong? Why is it your business? I said, oh, it's not just my business. It's my obligation to care and to get him. It's my obligation, whether it's man, woman, or child. If anyone is being harmed, it's an obligation. I think, what a world we could live in if just people would not be harmed for such trivial things. And we see it all the time. Yeah, you got your question now?
Yes, my question is, do you plan, or are you planning to write down the story of women in Turkey, part especially, because they really make a hard struggle for freedom?
Well, nothing like that has come to me. The stories generally, I don't just go to a country and look for a story, but I think you need to do it.
I'm planning.
You need to do it. You're there, you're on the ground, you know everything. I'd buy it. You need to write the story. You need to tell you've got a passion for it. That's what you need to do. Yes, yes. All of us need to help. So you need to do it. We'll all go buy your book.
Thank you so much for the cooperation.
Yes.
And my last words. I'm really wondering, is there any women organization, writer, especially in America or in Europe, which is gave voice to the women in the prison?
There's so many organizations in America and Europe. I don't know. Woohoo! It'd take a lot to come up with all of those. There's somebody always upset about something, about everything. Does anybody else have a question? I'll be right. Okay, Saud, and then no. Go ahead, Saud. You got the mic. There he goes.
Nice to see you again, Jean. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Even
My Kuwaiti family.
Yeah, even though we talk over the telephone sometimes,
Yeah.
but I can see that most of your writings is related to politics and the effect over women's or families. For the few months now, we've seen this happening in the United States with the new president. So are you going to write something about this? We know now so many women all over the States and abroad are protesting against some of the things President Trump have said. So are you having in mind?
Well, what I have done is I have written to my former congressman or Senator Sessions, who's Donald Trump's like best friend. We know him. And I have written and I have said, please do what you can, because I get really involved when someone starts attacking my Muslim friends for no reason. And I said, I've got a letter, and I wrote a letter about the people I've known in the Middle East, certainly my time in Kuwait, reminding them of the enormous humanitarian things that are done by your wonderful Amir and by Kuwaiti people. And I said, you need to say something about these. And not only that, Kuwaitis remained our friends. There are so many times in life, like if we were in trouble, I know y'all would jump in and help us. And when you were in trouble, we jumped in and helped. Most times, the people you help don't care about you later. But Kuwait is not like that. It's like one of the few things in life America did that turned out really well. And I believe that it did. And we certainly don't expect anything from Kuwait, because it was very important for the world that Kuwait not be occupied by Saddam and his armies. But that's how I did it, very quietly, because he says so many things. I think I should write Melania a letter and say, would you sew his lips together, please? So he won't say such rash things. So he may turn out to be a good president. We don't know yet. He may turn out, who knows? We'll see. Because they always go in and say one thing and do another. So, there's some things I don't like. I don't like the thought that, and you know, this can get so quickly, so everybody's so angry, but I don't like the thought of Jerusalem being the Israelis' capital. That bothers me a lot. Yeah. Well, let's hope he surprises us in a nice way. But it offends people. It offended me when he started saying no more Muslims and that. That offended me. And there's no need in that. I've always worried about a man or a woman who can't control their tongue. Because all of us need to think. We're adults. It's not like we're children. And I remember your father, when I met him, he was concerned because he has that 10-year visa to America. And he was he was worried about his visa. I don't think he has a thing to worry about. But it's home. It hits home. It really does. And you want to feel welcome in America. You should feel welcome when you go there. So we'll see. But no, I'm not going to be leading any marches at Washington. No, I don't have time. I'm busy. But I can write letters. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
أنا أتيت إلى هذه الأمسية.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes.
لأستمع إلى محاضرة بعنوان المرأة في مرآة الأدب، لكني استمتعت بشيء مختلف. شيء آخر. بما سردتيه أضع له عنوان المرأة في مرآة الحياة الاجتماعية والسياسية وليس الأدب.
Yes, sometimes I stray. I'm one of those speakers that it's really, maybe I need to move this one, that when people have always been amazed because I usually don't write a word, maybe I should, and I get to my audience and I look around and I see people and I start talking. And that kind of works for me. But sometimes then I stray off the topic that was a little, yeah, I thought about talking about it because I've read a lot about the first women writers and in ancient times, and it was usually poetry. And it was in Mesopotamia that the first woman that they have any proof that she was the first writer. And it's all very interesting. But then when I saw your faces and you seemed like people who would really care about my heroines and things, there I went. So I'm bad to do that. Does anybody else have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
First, I want to thank you for this lecture. And second, I want to ask you this question. Are you an emotional person? And if you are, did that help you to write?
Well, no one would know I'm an emotional person unless somebody's being hurt or an animal or whatever. I shocked your husband last time I was here when I'm bawling my eyes out about that little black cat. But I generally can be really calm when I'm facing things. I'm not emotional and like, someone asked me, how could you go to Iraq after writing The Rape of Kuwait? We went to a lot of dangerous things when I was in Kuwait. I was in Lebanon during that civil war that got a little bit dangerous. I have been blessed in that I'm not a fearful person. I've never been fearful of another human being. I always feel like I can beat up a grizzly bear, which goes to show you I'm not too intelligent. But I always feel I can do that. But I'm emotional then when people are hurt and people, particularly a woman who's killed and left on the street and her 7 children are left without a mother. Yes, I will get very emotional about that because I don't know how anybody couldn't get emotional. But usually calm in the face of, I could probably have met Saddam's armies. I mean, when we were in southern France and the military kept kicking Saud and me out saying, get back into Kuwait, and we'd go back. They finally let us stay. They just decided we weren't worth saving. So, yes, sir.
Yes. First, I love your accent.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Have you heard of Harriet Stowe, the writer, American writer?
The what? What's?
Harriet Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Oh, yes, I read it a dozen times as a child and cried like a baby.
Right.
Yeah.
President Lincoln taught her.
The little woman who started the war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can you compare her to recent writers nowadays in America?
Oh, gosh, that's a difficult one because she was so unique in what she did.
She had many children.
Maybe, what's the writer's last name is Walker, who, she's a lady who's a black writer, and she wrote the story that Oprah Winfrey starred in, but the movie, and I can, The Color Purple. Yeah, because that was going in and getting and digging. It was a little bit different because we're certainly, thank you, we don't have slaves anymore in this world. But I always thought that she was very good at that kind of story. And I don't know, I really can't think of anyone else right now. I'm the kind that can think of it tomorrow, and then I can let you know. But that's the only person I can think of right now. What about you? What do you think?
I think she was unique.
Yeah, very. And to write that, I mean, how many people here have read Uncle Tom's Cabin? Oh, fuck, well, you know.
There's a movie about it.
You read it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody should read it. It really makes you so aware of how horrific it is when a person's full rights are taken from
I
them.
think she was doing exactly what you are doing in a different angle.
Oh, so you think I can compare to her?
I hope
What a
so. I
compliment.
hope so.
Well, I never think about myself. I don't bring like everybody's trying to get me to write my memoirs because I have had some really exciting moments. Every time I sit down, then another story comes up that's much more interesting than my own. And so I leave it and go on. But maybe one day.
Thank you.
I would like, thank you so much. Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
Are we expecting you to write a new book, especially with the... Are we expecting you to write something new, especially with the things going all over, either the region or somewhere
Yeah,
else, all
I'm
over the world?
supposed to start a new book in the next month or so. And each book is different. I've had a book that took me 6 months to write, and I've had one that took me 3 years. So anyway, it takes forever. Yes, sir.
Personally,
Yeah.
I would like to know what you did with my husband and her when you went into Iraq. I hear some things from him.
Yeah.
When they went to Iraq and the resistance. I would like to know more about like the resistance in Kuwait during the invasion.
Oh, okay, the resistance in Kuwait. I've got pictures of the celebration. I was so impressed. This is the thing that I would like to write about. When I do my old memoirs, all of this will come into it. The whole world thought that Kuwaitis just sat and waited for help. No, that wasn't the case. There were so many brave Kuwaitis. As you know, you were right in the thick of it. So many brave Kuwaitis who were defending their country, who died. Horrible horror stories. And I think everybody, I know my friends in America will say things like, well, they just sat there and waited for us to rescue them. I said, oh, no, that's not true. They were fighting like crazy. They were driving the Iraqis nuts, you know, blowing up things, doing all kinds of stuff. And I said a lot of young people, usually it's the young people who carry that torch. A lot of young people lost. So they just didn't have the numbers. If you'd had the numbers, you could have kicked them out because you were determined. But you didn't have the number. Yes, I think that's an important story to be told. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, absolutely, because it's amazing how quick time passes on. And no one can imagine what it was like in Kuwait. Y'all were probably too young over here. So some of you. But there are people here. Hello, my darling. Hello. There are people here who lost loved ones too. And that's a story that needs telling. I have one in mind called The War Poet. Y'all want to tell who your loved one was, or would you rather? Go ahead. You need to. I bet they will recognize. You don't think so? Yeah. It's. Well, I know, but he went by a different pen name and his name. Give that to him and let him tell him. We have a family of a hero in here. Yes. You want to just give the name, and then I'll tell a little of the story?
Thank you very much.
Yes, this is important.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Jane. And you are a wonderful person that I met after 4 years of calling and chatting.
Speak up, please.
I met you after 4 years chatting and
Yes.
talking over the phone. Welcome to Kuwait.
Thank you.
Me and my family happy to have you as a second time in your
Yes,
country,
this is
Kuwait.
another family that I belong to too.
Thank you. Thank you. And we are happy here to have you. And I would love to talk about my dad, which is...
Would you please tell
Yes,
people
but
about
it's-
him a little? We have there's a lot of Kuwaiti war heroes.
Yes,
Here is
thank you.
the genuine article, big, and I hope to write a book about this man.
Thank you.
He is so special.
My dad, he was one of the POWs during the 1990s. Saddam took him as a hostage.
Can y'all hear him? Okay.
As a hostage.
Yeah.
My dad, he's well known with the name Faiq Abdul Jalil, Sha'ar. He's his poet.
You know him? Yes, that was Faris's father.
Yes.
And there's his wife and the daughter, and granddaughter.
So it's my story. It's kind of long. It's very hard for me to summarize it in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But I had the luck to have your opinion about the proposal I proposed to you, and it was great feedback that gave me hope to keep continuing our project, which is, I hope, during this
The
year.
world needs to know about your father.
Yes, sure.
And about you and your
Sure,
determination to
sure,
find him.
Sure, yes.
And then
you know,
Saddam
it's very
killed
hard.
him.
It's very hard, Jane, to talk about myself. You know.
Yes.
You know that. So I prefer to have it in a book soon.
Yes.
So it's gonna be more clear pictures.
All of Kuwait will be proud, and this will be something your children will love. All of Kuwait will be proud that they know about this man and his father, this woman's husband. I mean, I fell in love with your father.
Thank you.
Just from what a special man.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome again to Kuwait.
Yeah, he will inspire all. This gentleman wants to say something. Go ahead. He wants to speak with you, Faris. Yes. Very, yeah, and he was killed by Saddam. Okay.
معلش لان انا عشت في الكويت فتره الثمانينات. هتكلم عن الاستاذ فاي عبد الجليل، مش شاعر فقط بل كان واحد من اشهر كتاب الاعمده في الصحف الكويتيه. كان وحاليا بيغنوا له من اشهر المطربين العرب. قصته هي قصه معاناه كل الابطال اللي بيدافعوا عن مبادئهم يعني. وشكرا.
Yeah, thank you. And you may not agree with the title, but we'll fight that out later. Yeah. I love the war poet. I really do. He never stopped fighting for Kuwait. He could have left. He chose to stay and fight for his country, and he was lost because of his bravery.
هضيف حاجه تانية ان الاستاذ فاي عبد الجليل رحمه الله عليه ليه فيلم حاز البطل بتاعه على جائزه المهرجان الاسكندريه الدولي، من اروع الافلام التسجيليه اللي اتعملت على الاستاذ فاي عبد الجليل، واللي عملها ممثل هايل جدا يعتبر عالمي. وشكرا.
Okay. Fantastic. Does anybody else have a question? Have I talked you all out? I am so glad. This is wonderful. We didn't have as many people as we would have liked, but the people that were here were the top quality, so we got the best. So that is wonderful. Thank you all so much. It's been my pleasure. Let's just all pull together to make this world a better place. That's what we need to do. Thank you all my friends for coming, and thank you others that I would like to be friends with you. I can tell how nice you are. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you. Here, you need to meet this gentleman. Yes. Yeah, I'll be going with you. This man really has been so attentive and so nice. Yeah, I like that. When a person's speaking, it's so nice when people are really interested in what you're saying. That makes you feel so much better. Here, get a picture of me with this good-looking. Oh, shukran.